Hey, it's Mark Bergin from the Browns Nation Station. The listeners of the Browns Nation Station can show their Browns Nation pride by going to brownsnationswag.com. The site has all the latest and best fan gear to represent your team. Again, that's brownsnationswag.com. And if you're watching the Browns Nation Station on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss another episode. All right, cue the music. It's time to start the show. Welcome to the Browns Nation Station. I'm your host, Mark Bergin, joined by fellow BrownsNation.com writers Pat Opperman and Steven Kubitiza. Fellas, the NFL draft has wrapped up. I'm really excited to talk some Browns this afternoon, but welcome in. It's been, I think the last we talked, we were debating whether the Browns should sign Jadeveon Clowney. Here we are a few weeks later talking post-draft, but I'm excited to chop it up with both of you this afternoon.
It's a nice change of pace, a very positive weekend, I think, for the Browns.
That's my favorite time of year because now I get to work on my 2022 mock drafts and get right back into things here, because I can't get enough of that stuff. But, it was another awesome weekend. And, nothing has happened this weekend that I think has diminished the enthusiasm of many Browns fans, much less me.
Yeah, Mel Kiper move over. Pat Opperman from BrownsNation.com is going to be taking over future draft evaluations. But fellas, Greg Newsome II, the corner from Northwestern, coming over to the Browns. The big takeaway I had with this was, a couple things. One, if he stays healthy, that's really going to be the key for Newsome specifically. But we're now talking about a Browns defensive backfield. Also considering you're going to get Greedy Williams back. Grant Delpit's going to be returning from injury. A unit that was a bit of a liability in the 2020 season now is a position group of depth. I really like this draft pick of Newsome because I think you're going to get the best out of Greedy Williams. We know Denzel Ward's going to start on the other side, but I really like this pick for Cleveland. What did both of you think about it?
Yeah, I can start on this. I think it was a good idea, a great idea to target corner because, a lot of times, you just said it, Mark, saying, we're getting Greedy Williams back and Grant Delpit back. So, but, is that a sure thing? It seems like a lot of times with the Browns, it's, these guys are all coming back. I saw a tweet from a reporter that said the Browns basically also added Greedy and Grant Delpit as well. Greedy Williams has some very concerning injuries. It was, news popping up all last season about if he's ever going to be able to play ever again. So, you land Newsome, even though he did have those injury issues. You're adding another talented player to the bunch. They seem to have loved him in the draft evaluation process. He seems like a good guy from all accounts, just so far, seeing what we've seen. And it's always tough to gauge them off stats. I think some people might get hung up on corner stats. Anytime the ball was thrown his way, he rarely allowed any big plays or anything. So that's what you want to see from a first-round corner. But I think the main takeaway is maybe the Browns didn't necessarily need to add any players in the entire draft. Like they did not need anyone, but adding someone like this to this corner group, I think was a no-brainer. And if we are dealing with injuries or those pesky soft tissue injuries, which are always a disaster, it's good just to keep adding talent to the bunch and just let the, best players rise to the top.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about Greedy Williams, but this was an excellent pick, and it was the first of many things that kind of fell into place for Berry. The last minute, for some reason, all the mock drafts that I was seeing, or at least the popular ones, the cornerbacks were being taken kind of early, and for that reason, a lot of people were saying that the guy that wound up being our second round pick might be our first round pick. But I'm not sure what exactly happened. The first two cornerbacks came off at 8 and 9, and then it was just this nobody was picking cornerbacks for a while. Third guy came off right ahead of us, and then Greedy Williams was there. Craig Newsome was there for the taking, and I know a lot of people are worried about the injuries and saying, we're getting one injured guy for another injured guy, but I think both of them will be okay. It's when you get hurt in college, we see a lot of guys that miss games in college come on and do very well and never get hurt again in the NFL. We also see guys that lose their first 2-3 years to injuries in the NFL and come back, never lose another game again. Williams' injury is a shoulder. It's not legs. It's not knees. It's not a foot. He's going to be able to get down the field and move and everything. He might have a little bit of trouble raising his arm as fast, but he's still got the other arm. And I'm very optimistic that between the two of them, even if they do get dinged up, if they are a little bit, banged up, we'll be able to keep at least 2 out of those 3 starting outside cornerbacks on the field at any given moment, which is important, not just to cover those guys, but it also keeps Troy Hill on the inside at the slot where he's strongest. Right now, before we got Newsome, Troy Hill was the backup outside corner. And then who knows who we're gonna put inside at the nickel. So it was a good spot. It basically filled the concern, if not the need, in the defensive backfield. And I think it was a you can't go wrong. Newsome also has that cockiness that you need. He told everybody I am the best cornerback on the market. I probably should have been the first overall pick, not just the first defensive back. And that's fantastic. And he has the numbers to back it up. Even though he didn't play as many games as he could have, he was the only cornerback in the draft that did not give up a reception on 3rd or 4th down all year long. He had a 0.00 passer rating against on 3rd and 4th down for the 2020 season. That's your classic lockdown outside guy. And having 2 of them, Denzel Ward on one side and Newsome on the other, so I think Newsome will get the start over Williams. It just frees up so many things in the middle for the imagination of Joe Woods to come into play. I mean, he can take chances in other locations by knowing he has 2 lockdowns on the outside now. So I thought it was a fantastic pick. And it came up as one of the biggest steals of the draft, I believe.
And I think this Browns defense needs a dog, someone other than just Myles Garrett. And they have someone with that now who plays with the utmost confidence. Steven, I thought you brought up a great point, because some people might point to, only 1 interception in college in 3 years playing at Northwestern. But you look at the pass breakups, you look at the completion percentages, and you also, the fact that, again, he had great success on 3rd and 4th down on passing downs and passing situations. You have to be encouraged. I mean, a 4.38 40, so he can run with the best, 40-inch vertical. So it's just like, again, I go back to something that was a bit of a liability for the Browns in the 2020 season is now actually a position of strength heading into this upcoming season.
Yeah, I was just quickly looking up, when you look at top corners, you think maybe of the old like Revis Island days with Darrelle Revis, and just any top corner. No one's sometimes they do have some crazy amount of interceptions, but I mean, like Pat said, you just have this rotation of dominant guys. So, usually with any Browns draft, there's people saying, I hate this pick without knowing anything that's going on. That's a, annual tradition, but that's usually at the top of the draft. And I haven't found any like negativity about it, which is a good thing for now.
And I want to piggyback off that too. I'm very happy that Newsome was the player available there versus Virginia Tech's Caleb Farley. I think Farley has a lot more upside, but entering the league with 2 back surgeries, it's really feast or famine. And especially considering that the Titans swung and missed on their draft pick a season ago. He's not even on the roster anymore. They've gotten rid of him. But what's my guy from Georgia? Anyways, it's a high risk, high reward. Whereas I think Newsome's just going to be a little bit more of a known commodity, given that, yes, he's had injuries, but not to the extent of needing a back surgery.
One quick note about, go ahead, Pat. Mine's about him as a person, but go ahead. You have the more analysis.
No, I was glad that that Farley came off ahead of Newsome. I'm not sure that the Browns would have picked Farley if Newsome wasn't on the board. I think they might have gone with plan A or A1. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It could have changed the whole draft. Once Farley came off, I was like, wow, okay. That leaves us with a couple of other really good options there that I think we made up much better in the deal.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Steven.
Just really quick before we move on from Newsome, I just wanted to say, you want your first round pick to represent the city and the organization. And he had a suit during the draft that called out a lot of social causes. And he basically said, I want people to know that Greg Newsome stands with them. So you can't beat it. You can't beat someone like that in the first round.
Yeah. He also said the other thing he said, besides, talking bigly to himself, he said he wanted to play this week. I wish there was a game this week. I can't wait to show the Cleveland Browns fans what I can do. He was so happy with the way he was received. He got so much positive feedback from the Dogs. And he just sounds like he's all in. That's great.
100%. He went to IMG Academy for a senior year in high school too, which is a powerhouse in Bradenton, Florida, a who's who of athletes, not just in the sport of football, but really every NBA draft, every NFL draft, there's someone from IMG Academy coming out. So he's just the latest. And then I love that he watched the draft from a Lifetime Fitness. So like you said, he's ready to go. He's going to be ready come camp. And I like that he's coming in with the mentality of play me on special teams, play me wherever. I just want to help the team win. It's like, I love that mentality and the swagger that he brings to this defense. And speaking of which, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, one of the most fun names to say in this draft. Cleveland moved up to get him, and it seemed like he was just going to free fall forever. I saw a lot of draft boards that had, I'm going to call him Woo for short. I've heard other people call him Woo or JOK for short, but I saw a lot of other draft analysts had Woo as the second best linebacker in this draft behind Penn State's Micah Parsons. So the fact that the Browns got him in the second round, I think, is a real steal for Cleveland.
On some of the draft boards, especially the ones where the cornerbacks were going so early, Peter King, one of the biggest names out there doing mock drafts, he predicted the Browns would trade up in the first round with Chicago to number 20 to grab Woo. And, he just kept falling. I couldn't explain it. And if you were watching the draft live, nobody could explain it. There was a few people that were shocked he was still there. When he got past, I think it was one of the NFC East teams, he got past them in the second round. That's when I started thinking he might actually fall to 59. And just as I was thinking that, trying to do the math, who might pick him, who might want a linebacker before 59, there it was, Cleveland on the clock. I was like, whoa, they traded up for the guy. And as soon as they said he traded up, I knew it had to be. I couldn't think of anybody else they would do that for. So it's disappointing to Woo that he dropped into the second round. But the first thing he said was he felt so good to see that somebody traded up to get him. So I think that kind of counteracted the potential disappointment there. So another guy happy to be with the Browns.
Yeah, I actually looked at ESPN's rankings, and at inside linebacker, he's the top guy. So, and he's top 15 on some overall draft boards, like overall. So you kind of question, why did he fall so far? I don't know if that's because of, something with him, or if it's just a classic example of maybe teams draft boards were a little different than what media draft boards were saying. But I think overall, unless you guys have some insight, but overall, I think it was an absolute steal. But you first reaction, you say, okay, why is this guy, if he's ranked so high at his position, why is he fallen so far? But I don't think anything's been out there that makes it seem like there's an issue. So,
well,
no, sorry.
Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead, Pat.
I think there was two things. I think one of them was that he's small. And there was a lot of discussion about whether he really is a linebacker or a safety.
Mm-hmm.
That might have only come up, it might have come up more because this year's draft for safeties, the safety class was not very good. And I think he was just I think he was a victim of his own success. He's so versatile. He's fast. He covers passes. He hits the holes hard. He's very smart. He does everything. And I think teams just didn't, really weren't sure where he would fit in a lot of their defenses. He didn't just have a role. He was kind of those guys you want running all over the field. And I think that actually, shouldn't work against him, but it makes him a perfect fit in the middle of Joe Woods' defense. I see a lot of Cleveland Browns fans on social media like, linebacker. We don't need linebackers. And when I know when I projected he would be a first-round pick, I was called a few names because the Browns don't value linebackers, right? That old, the Browns don't value. Nothing. The Browns hate linebackers. They don't use them. I'm like, guys, just because they only use one or two doesn't diminish the value of that one or two linebackers on the field. They play a huge role in the middle of that dime and in the nickel as well. They got to cover a lot of ground. And this guy, there's a video out there of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah running down the field, step for step, right alongside Devonta Smith, okay, the top wide receiver in a lot of draft picks. This guy is fast. He can cover. He can also play the run very well. He's smart. He sees things. He reacts. He's more than a linebacker. He is the centerpiece of Joe Woods' defense, I think, going forward.
I'm really excited to see his name on the back of a Browns jersey just because of how many characters it's going to take up. But I think a lot of Browns fans would have been happy with Wu with the 26th pick. They wind up getting him in the second round. So I think this adds to the depth of the linebacker position, even if they don't use that many linebackers, because Anthony Walker, one of your big offseason signings, along with Jacob Phillips, Mac Wilson, and Sione Takitaki already on the roster. All of those players are younger than 25, which is great for their upside, their development. But a lot of young players will tend to struggle early on and will struggle a little bit with that consistency. They'll be able to find 2 or 3 or however many they need to perform at that position because they now have depth at that position. Whereas last year, you kind of had what you had, BJ Goodson's gone. So you're going to have to get production from that level of the defense. And I think you will, considering who's now on the defensive line, helping out Myles Garrett with your signing with Jadeveon Clowney, Tack McKinley, Malik Jackson, what have you.
It's almost like you're getting that Jabril Peppers type defensive player in college who did everything, but now he's going to be used properly, hopefully, and not hiding 30 yards off the line of scrimmage. So that was I'm kind of going with what you guys said, where, you kind of get that linebacker safety who can do everything. And like you said, Pat, any fan outrage that the Browns don't value linebackers is totally insane because every single position on the field is valued. So
don't forget the Browns picked up a second linebacker later that we'll talk about who, if you read what he was doing, you can almost call him JOK Light. I mean, he's just another versatile guy. And it makes you wonder about some of the other linebackers that are more traditional on the roster, whether they will actually survive. We'll discuss that later, maybe.
Let's go to the round 3 selection of Auburn wide receiver Anthony Schwartz. Guys, I think this is a player who's still going to be developing, still learning the receiver position. But you talk about speed. A 4.25 40. That is not an exaggeration. The fastest among all 2021 prospects. He was on Auburn's track and field team too. And when they were showing the highlights of him playing at Auburn and burning other SEC defensive backs, like the SEC is like AAA compared to the NFL, right? And he's making SEC defensive backs look slow on his highlight tape. I think the Browns could use Schwartz as a gadget player, maybe as a return man. But I'm excited to see what they could potentially do if they can get him the ball and get him the ball in space.
Well, the goal should be to copy what the Chiefs are doing, right? So you could beat the Chiefs. And if you kind of can land a Tyreek Hill type player, a Mecole Hardman type player, you just, instead of running those, having Jarvis Landry run through the backfield and maybe handing him the ball or having him throw the ball, you just hand it to your fastest guy and use his strengths. Don't try to make him a route runner that he's not. So it's just, you add any speed. It's just exciting because, the Browns and the Bills, the Ravens, everyone's trying to do what the Chiefs are doing to beat the Chiefs. I mean, you had a guy running a 4.25 40. It doesn't matter if he can run a route, if you could just get the ball in his hands, maybe 5 times a game.
Well, yes, they definitely wanted a fast receiver to draw the safety away from Odell. And they got the fastest guy on the field. I mean, the guy's a world-class sprinter. He was the second place in the world at age 20 in the 100-meter dash at the World Championships. And, and that's great, but he has to catch the ball. So
pitch it to him.
He comes with a reputation that his reputation is basically he has slow hands. Sometimes he doesn't get them up in time to make the catch. And he doesn't change directions or run under the ball very well. So the plus is that he has Baker Mayfield, one of the most accurate deep throwers in the league. But if he drops the first few, teams are going to double Odell and let him try to catch the ball by himself downfield. He's going to need a little bit of work. He's probably in my book, he is the biggest risk of the draft from Andrew Berry. But you can teach some of that stuff. That you can't beat speed. I mean, speed kills, and like you said, run him around end and let him take off. And we also Odell Beckham, what he did on that end around the last game that he was healthy. Just imagine if you guys saw that 40-meter dash, it was like a cartoon. I mean, you couldn't see his arms and his legs moving. He was that fast. It was just like this blob of body flying down the thing and didn't blur where his feet and hands should have been. He is just spooky fast.
Pat, it sounds like we're going to need to pool our money together and send Anthony Schwartz some stickum. We'll do this under the radar, unmarked packaging, and that way we can make sure we shore up his hands headed into his rookie season.
Sounds like a worthy investment.
Mark, I'd just like to point out really quick that I'm definitely becoming an ESPN draft analyst because I just compared him to Tyreek Hill, and he can't catch the ball and hasn't played in a single NFL game. Every comp during the draft was insane. So we're getting there.
I always try to say shades of a certain player just because to say, he is this player is unfair to the rookie coming in having to play up to those expectations. But then a lot of times, Tyreek Hill, an all pro receiver in his own right. In round 4, the Browns improved their offensive tackle position, getting Cincinnati's James Hudson. To me, he's going to kind of take over the Kendall Lamb swing tackle spot. We'll see what happens with Chris Hubbard as he's working his way back from a knee injury as well. I love how Hudson gave former Browns tackle Joe Thomas a shout out when he was converting from a defensive tackle position to an offensive tackle position, saying that he would watch YouTube videos of Thomas in his technique playing the offensive tackle position. So I love that he had the wherewithal to give homage to a Browns legend. And again, I think ultimately what he's going to do this upcoming season is serve as that team swing tackle, forbid if Jedrick Wills or Jan Conklin goes down with an injury.
I'd say it never hurts to add younger tackles. Go, Pat. Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, Bill Callahan, coaching, you can pretty much take a good young tackle and turn him into a potential starter and fill in. Apparently, the Browns are going away from last year's strategy of taking guards and pushing them outside the tackle and win games. But it'll probably work better with career tackles. The other thing, too, that when this happens, we're all saying he's going to take a backup role and all. There's something on the horizon that I think is off the radar for most people, and that is Jack Conklin. Next year, we have Teller looking for a big contract, and we have a couple of other big free agent linemen. And expectations are that a lot of them are going to get a lot of money. All right. Jack Conklin has an opt-out at the end of this season. He can become a free agent after 2021 if he wants to. So even though he signed up for a bunch of years, he has an opt-out. And if he decides, or his agent decides, the way these things work, that he wants to try to get more money, he could decide, hey, I'm going to opt out. So it was a good move to get a real tackle in there. And we have to develop somebody, not just for injury, but for the worst case scenario in 2022 as well.
Yeah, my main point from this draft and building off what you're saying, or from this pick, building off what you're saying, Pat, is that, you have that, all the salary stuff in the back of your mind. Hubbard's a free agent after the year. Teller's going to want a gazillion dollars. So you just keep adding these, young tackles. And if it doesn't work out, You give them some special teams time, whatever. Keep them on the practice squad. I mean, it just never hurts to add young offensive linemen because obviously it's a brutal position. So if you have some just youth in your organization, to me, I think adding a tackle or two every draft, if it's later, it's just an easy pick for any team.
I also like that he's an Ohio guy, played college ball at Cincinnati after transferring from Michigan. He's also a Toledo native as well. So again, getting more depth at a position where you're already in pretty good shape, but again, preparing for the worst. And Pat, I think that's tremendous insight, breaking down Jack Conklin's contract, something that honestly coming into today's pod, I didn't even know about because like you said, they signed him to a massive offseason deal last offseason a year ago. And so again, maybe he would want to leave after a Super Bowl win and he's got a Super Bowl ring on his finger, Pat, but I didn't even know that about his opt-out. So good insight there.
There you go with the first Super Bowl prediction, by the way. We're only halfway through.
Also in round 4, the Browns get defensive tackle Tommy Togiai out of Ohio State. And I was looking into his background. His father was a professional rugby player. And initially with his selection, my big question is, are the Browns going to bring back Sheldon Richardson on a reduced salary? But then not just with the draft pick of Togiai, but also signing Marvin Wilson out of Florida State, which I'm going to be honest with both of you, I have no idea how he was not drafted. I know he dealt with some medical issues and some injuries, but to me, this just kind of shores up that the Browns are going to go with the tackles that they have on the roster right now, with Andrew Billings coming back, a player who didn't play in 2020, Malik Jackson's one of your offseason signings, Jordan Elliott as well, a draft pick from a season ago, and then you get Togiai out of Ohio State. I think the Browns, are pretty set at defensive tackle at this point. I can't imagine Sheldon Richardson will be back in 2021.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think they might have gotten two pretty good defensive tackles. Togiai, in a couple of mock drafts, or a couple of ratings actually, the College Draft Network actually had Togiai ranked as number 15 at defensive tackle, which is unimpressive to say the least in a bad year. And they had the other guy, Wilson, ranked number 7. Then I went to, I believe it was ESPN, one of the major guys had it exactly the opposite. They had Togiai at number 7, and they had Wilson at like number 20. He was even worse. Togiai, this guy is just built to be a defensive lineman. There's an article in brownsnation.com today actually about him. This guy was born at 12 pounds, okay? 12 pounds at birth. The doctors turned around and said, I bet this guy does 40 repetitions on the bench press in a couple of years. And that's what he did at his pro day before being drafted. The guy was just built for, something, He's done a pretty good job. He actually could have used another year there. He took a chance coming out. He missed the championship game last year because of COVID. He himself was positive for COVID and broke his heart. And he thought about going back, but he says, I'm healthy. I'm healthy as an ox. He got over the COVID, obviously. And who knows what will happen next year. So he took a chance on himself and came out in the draft. And actually went a little bit lower than he thought he might. The other guy, Wilson, has something to prove too. And, he had a very off year last year after 2 excellent seasons before that. And the two of them, according to the director of player personnel, he expects both of them to be part of the rotation for 2022. Mm-hmm. So it does sound like Richardson is not on the horizon at this point anyway. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. 2 notes for me on this pick. It's like first off, it's part of the area of the draft where you start saying, are these guys going to make the roster? So, of course the team's going to hype up every pick, but I think with him, he is going to make the roster just because, like we've talked about it, they're so thin at the position, getting rid of Sheldon Richardson. So, but I wouldn't totally rule him out yet, Richardson, because, maybe he's a free agent well into the summer, like Clowney was last year. And the Browns go, hey, you want to come back and chase the Super Bowl? So, maybe he does it this year, signs a 1-year deal, and then next year is a free agent. So who knows what's going to happen, depending on how long he's a free agent. And then the second note, everyone in Cleveland for years always freaked out about them not drafting Ohio State players. They took Denzel Ward a few years ago. Yeah. It's not a thing. I don't think it was some weird thing. So, but when they do it, it is a story. It's always a story. So it's nice to see Andrew Berry just drafting who he sees as the best players on his board, and, not any silly storylines coming to play about Buckeyes.
I'm with you there. I will say this too, going back to Wilson. I thought I was going to say this towards the end of the pod, but I've got to make sure I state this. There is tape of him going up against Mekhi Becton when Florida State played Louisville. Mekhi Becton, one of the Jets' top draft picks, what was it, last year or the year before that? And if you watch the tape, Marvin Wilson tosses Mekhi Becton to the ground like a rag doll. So if he can do that against a player who is a first-round draft pick and is going to be tasked with keeping new Jets quarterback Zach Wilson upright, I can't wait to see what he does in a Browns uniform. And clearly the Browns wanted him. They can actually offer him more money as an undrafted free agent than they would have been able to had he been drafted, say, in the 7th round. So I'm with you there, Steven, in terms of we are getting to the part of, it's quite, once you really get beyond round 4, 5, 6, 7, is this player even going to be on the 53-man roster come the start of the season. In round 5, Virginia Tech linebacker Tony Fields II. And Pat, you were saying before he's a little like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah light. What did you mean by that? And I saw some of those comparisons too, but make your case for this.
If you watch this guy, Tony Fields, play, he is basically all over the field. He is a super smart player, definitely an Andrew Berry special. He can see plays developing before they happen, and he just reacts. And he can stuff the run. He has lots of tackles. He was constantly among the leaders in tackles. He had interceptions. He had block passes. He had tackles for loss. He had a couple of sacks. This guy was all over. He can do everything, and he was really, really smart, which would help other players too get better. He, like I said, he can really recover well. He's great at recovery too. So even when he makes that first step in the middle of a play, he can see things. He starts getting sucked into something. It's a good fake, and he just has this redirectional gene or somewhere that he can just stop on a dime and go after the ball. He's very good. His only knock, again, he's another linebacker that projects to possibly be a strong safety. He's a little small. He's a very willing tackler. He'll go after the ball with everything he's got, but he's a little bit small. So at the NFL level, there's a little bit of concern that we'll get run over. But that, again, that's a concern of a lot of people when they come out of college, that they need to bulk up, man up, whatever. And we don't need this guy on the field in 2021. So we got some time to kind of turn him into a bigger guy or turn him into a safety, whatever it takes. But he's definitely almost in the same mold as JOK, just not quite at that level.
Yeah, I'll build on that quickly and just say he's definitely, with the uniform changes, he's a single-digit linebacker. So he's probably better at safety, 6 foot tall, 220 pounds. Someone like this, I think just throw him on special teams, let him get their time. And like you said, Pat, he's not going to be needed, likely at linebacker or safety, hopefully, because that'd be, worst case scenario if he has to be out there playing significant time. So just put him on special teams. He's a young guy, fast guy, and then, see what you can make him in a few years.
I think it's interesting too. He played the middle linebacker position in a 3-3-5 West Virginia Mountaineers defense. And you also have to keep in mind just the style of play in the Big 12 is so favored towards the spread offense. So that's kind of the reason why you do that. You only have 6 defensive players in the box, but teams in the Big 12 are so pass happy out of the spread. I just thought it was interesting that that was the position that he played in college, because that's really not a scheme that you would see at the NFL level. Okay, we'll go to the next round 5 pick, and this is Georgia safety Richard Lecounts. And the big thing for me is you look at his production in a 3-year starter for the Bulldogs, and it's like, how did he go in round 5, coming off a bad pro day after he had a motorcycle accident? But the big thing, no surgeries as well. So again, another position group where probably special teams player, but given the depth that the Browns have in the secondary, I think Cleveland's going to have some tough decisions to make in terms of which players not only to start, but to keep. And if I'm an NFL team looking at the Browns secondary right now, if they end up cutting one of the cornerbacks they have, one of the safeties that they have, you might be getting a very, very good player just given the depth that they have at that position at this standpoint.
Well, let's face it. I mean, when you're drafting as successfully as Andrew Berry is, anybody that you try to put onto the practice squad is at risk of getting picked up by somebody else. I mean, if you're smart and you're another GM and you got a need, just look for the guy that's the extra, player on the Browns and go pick him up. He'll probably be a pretty good deal. This guy, LeCount, again, almost the exact same thing that I can say. He's not as versatile as Fields, but he's another guy, very willing tackler. Good play recognition, reacts well, jumps very well for the ball when he gets it. But he's small. And it's another one that's going to have to bulk up a little bit probably for the NFL level. Definitely a developmental player down the road, could be really good. And obviously, Berry thought well enough of him to take him in the 5th round. So he must have something else going for him.
Yeah. When he was taken, I was watching ESPN at the time, and they had a good point. Usually during the draft, they're giving everyone positive, reviews, which I'm on board with. You don't ruin a kid's day of his life. But Lecounts was one of the few players that they were kind of arguing about because he ran a 4.8 40. It's between, just read 4.76 and 4.82. he said he wasn't at 100%, but he was close. He has this motorcycle accident, which I don't think he should be. They should just leave it in the past because he's a kid. But that 4.8 40 is what slid him down the board. So, you say, okay, the casual fan says, we got a Georgia safety in the 5th round. He's got to be good. He's from Georgia. But I think it was Louis Riddick, or Mel Kiper, one of the two. They said, how many safeties can run a 4.8 and be successful in the NFL? So I guess the hope here from Andrew Berry is that LeCount gets healthier and, speeds up, because even if you put him on special teams, if he's significantly slower than some of the returners, if even someone like Myles Garrett can run faster than one of your safeties, it's not a good sign. So definitely a developmental player in the late pick.
The thing is he didn't get 8 interceptions by running a 4.8.
Exactly.
Heard a couple of guys say he probably would have done better to skip his pro day and just say I'm not 100% yet. Even if it cost him around, at least the expectations might have been a little bit fairer for him. But again, intelligence covers a lot also, but it doesn't cover 4.8. So I think that's what Berry is seeing, that, this guy, it was a pretty bad accident. This wasn't just like, my bike. He got hit by multiple cars somehow while on a dirt bike. It wasn't even a full-size motorcycle. It was a dirt bike. And multiple cars hit him. And, thankfully he didn't need any surgeries, but he was pretty banged up. So, I think that's what Berry's hoping for. Just give him some time. Again, another guy we don't need on the field this year. And, but, when he gets back, he could really be something.
In round 6, the Browns took UCLA running back / receiver / gadget player / Swiss Army knife. Demetric Felton out of UCLA was the last pick that they had in the draft. The Browns are listing him at running back, which I think is interesting because Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are probably going to get most of the workload. I think it'll be interesting to see if Felton can somehow work his way onto this roster. I don't know at the receiver position what he could bring to the table. He's a little bit undersized, doesn't have elite speed, but is very quick and elusive and agile. I thought he was kind of a do-it-all player for UCLA in the clips that I saw, but I will say this, in the open field, his ability to make opposing defenders miss was very impressive.
Yeah, definitely. Another, like I've been saying, another late round pick where do you want to break it down all day? But who knows? He could end up being a star. You never know with these late round guys. But the fact, like you said, Mark, they listed him as a running back. Maybe he is just going to be a gadget player. Maybe they'll throw him as a punt returner, kick returner. Just, say, hey, we just have this guy's 5'9". We like what he can do on the field. And let's just, we're not going to have him out there running routes, like as a receiver all the time. Might not be any room on the roster, but put him as on the practice squad, just see what he can do. It's kind of that last pick of the draft for the Browns where you say, who's the most, exciting player for us? Who could maybe, show up and be, I'm not going to make any more crazy comparisons, but just be, someone we can give the ball 3 to 5 times a game and he'll make an impact. Maybe it's as a kick returner, who knows, but there's no crazy upside to his pick, with his size, 5'9" and under 200 pounds, but you never know. So, I have nothing negative to say about him, but he doesn't jump off the page, and that's why he was taken so late.
Well, you guys know how I hate to disagree with my colleagues here, but this is my dark horse. This is definitely my dark horse to make the roster. Okay. This guy is listed as a running back. He ain't no running back. Okay. He can run. He ran, I think, 600 yards last year, something like that. This is a Swiss Army knife type of guy. This is that little guy on the roster that can show up anywhere, anytime. If you thought the other Schwartz was a Tyreek Hill, I think this guy has a better shot at it. Not as fast, of course, but he can line up anywhere. This guy runs incredible routes. Okay, considering they call him a running back first, this guy ran some of the cleanest routes in the draft. He also adjusts very well to the ball. They got film on him making leaping catches, stopping on a dime, leaving defenders, gasping for air. This guy can do that. He can line up and take a handoff from anywhere. He can, be that swing end around guy. If this guy can field a punt, then I think there's no way you can keep him off the roster. I think this is your trick player, your guy you throw in there, once in a while. That's what, especially if our defense plays to the way it's supposed to play, And I would predict that the Browns, given their offense continues or even goes more explosive, like Stefanski says it's going to be, we're going to be in a lot of like 30 to 10 games instead of 30 to 28 games. And this is the guy you might see in the fourth quarter in the backfield, along with Dearness Johnson pulling off some crazy things just for fun. So.
Pat, let me know what size you need. I'll send a Demetric Felton jersey over to your home now.
Thanks, Bill.
I mentioned and made my case for Marvin Wilson earlier. In terms of the undrafted free agents that the Browns have signed, is there anyone else that stands out to you? Again, I am on board with the Marvin Wilson signing. Again, I go back to just what I've seen on tape and what I've seen on tape against other very good to great competition at the collegiate level. But were there any other undrafted free agents that the Browns signed that you think could make an impact on this team?
I guess my main note would be on Wilson. I was just, he's the obvious name that jumps off the board. And and Browns Nation, we did have our list of all the undrafted free agents selected. But with Wilson, I was trying to find out why did he not get drafted? And I found a good, he did call out his coach, Mike Norvell at Florida State, and what was a total disaster for that program. So maybe teams, NFL teams can be weird at times and say, oh, we don't like his character, but he was a 21-year-old kid or something. So is that really an issue? I mean, they handed him $192,000 guaranteed as an undrafted free agent. He likely had his pick of many teams. But who's going to turn down a chance with the Browns, especially if you're saying, hey, I'm getting guaranteed money. That's a lot of money. So they must like me, if they're going to hand me that offer. And most of that isn't base salary. So it's kind of a good sign for him with just I read a $30,000 signing bonus. The rest is in salary. So he's
Steven, let me hop in here when you're talking about calling out his coaching staff at Florida State. So he played for 4 years at Florida State. His first year's head coach is Jimbo Fisher, goes, leaves, and now Jimbo Fisher's the A&M coach. The disaster of the Willie Taggart era in Tallahassee, I can tell you firsthand, we'll never know what kind of quarterback DeAndre Francois was because they could not keep him upright. The offensive line was abysmal. I'd rather have paper mache protecting me straight up. And then you go this past season with Mike Norvell in year one at Florida State. So you're talking about a college player who had 3 different full-time head coaches, not to mention interims, while all of those moving parts were going on. To have that instability in only 4 seasons, I think says more about Florida State than it does Marvin Wilson. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah. Well, that's my point too, is that saying NFL teams may say, oh, this guy has character issues. But for something like me, I go, and like you, Mark, you say, well, come on, like, look at the coaches and look at the program. So that he might have slid off some teams' boards because of that, but who knows? If he was rated so highly, it's another questionable slide.
Yeah. The other thing with Wilson, though, too, you can be mad at your coach, but you still got to play the game, okay? In 2018 and 2019, PFF gave Wilson a 90.1 and a 90.7 overall grade at his position, okay? He slipped all the way into the mid-60s as a senior. He came in overweight, and then he got injured. So he had a pretty bad year, but I don't know. You can have a tough time. I get what you're saying about Florida State wasn't an easy place to be the last few years, but especially if you plan on being a pro, I think that that raises all kinds of bells and alarms. He didn't exactly rise up to the occasion, try to prove his coach wrong by being an all conference guy or whatever. So I'm a little bit, I think he can be something fantastic. I think obviously they think he can get back in shape, but he has to show up in shape to play or he's as good as gone. And I think that, that's a chance they're taking. If he shows up back into his 2018 and 19 form, they got to steal at the UDFA. And, like you alluded to, he had his choice of quite a few teams and chose the Browns. That's a good sign right off the bat. So hopefully he does come around, but he's got to take some ownership of what happened. And I'm sure he did in any interview he had with the coaches.
I tell you what, though, that Mekhi Becton clip, it's just going to be playing on loop in my home between now and the start of training camp, just because you see him go up against one of the strongest players at the collegiate level. He just throws him to the ground. It's awesome to watch. So if he can bring that physicality, something that the Browns could use at the line of scrimmage. Go ahead, Pat.
Sorry. the other pattern we saw with the UDFAs, almost all of them, if not all of them, and I see we signed 5 so far, almost all of them had a rough final year. 3 or 4 of them actually transferred because of COVID. They were full-time starters at bigger schools and transferred. 2 of them transferred to Charlotte, one to Illinois State, I think. And, so, and then they got victimized. The 2 that went to Charlotte went there because their teams were threatening not to play at all or to play a limited schedule. And they wanted to make sure they got a full season in before they went to the draft. And then what happened was Charlotte's schedule got blown up because half of their opponents had COVID. So they only played 6 games. And, so these guys' stats kind of fell off the end of the table, in their senior years or their last year before they went into the draft. So that seems to be a pattern that they saw that, okay, these are guys that if they came out last year, might have got drafted, and because of circumstances, they did not. The one other guy besides Wilson that stands out to me is Romeo Mcknight. He's a defensive end. Guy had something like 25 tackles for a loss and 15 sacks in like his first 2 seasons at I forget where he was. I think it was in Illinois State, for Illinois State. And then he transferred to Charlotte. He had, I think, 4 more tackles for a loss and 1.5 sacks, something like that. But he's got some pretty high marks as well from PFF, and he could be, that's another crowded position, but definitely somebody down the road that might be part of the rotation.
I got my guy, Mark.
All right.
If you're ready for it. So I'm going with Tre Harbison III, running back, another Charlotte guy. Was a grad student at Charlotte, spent his first 3 seasons at NIU in the MAC, ran for over 1,000 yards twice, is maybe somehow lands on the roster, gets a few carries a game, or just sits on the practice squad, most likely if he were to make the team. But yeah, an 1,000-yard runner, a lot of times front offices don't want to see that because of all the wear and tear on your legs. But last year only ran the ball 80 times during that crazy COVID season. So could come in fresh. He's a just under 6 feet tall, bulky running back. So you're just adding talent. Obviously, no one's going to supplant Chubb or Hunt. But when you're starting to get in the conversation of, are both of these guys going to be retained for a long time? Are they going to re-sign Chubb? So you just keep adding running backs from college. Always want to add a young running backs if possible, maybe 1 a year, and just see where you can go from there. So being able to run for 1,000 yards, even in the MAC, which sometimes defense is non-existent. As a 2-time MAC graduate, I saw it live. But just someone that stands out a little bit.
Charlotte did Harbison a favor too. He came in. He's another one of these smart guys, Steve, Andrew Berry specials. The guy, besides running for 1,000 yards, he's also was noted that he can catch the pass. He catches the ball very well out of the backfield, and he pass blocks pretty well. Now, of course, that's at the MAC level. Who knows how that will transfer into the pros? But the thing that Charlotte did with him is they made him a special teams player as well. So he's got that going for him too. So if it comes down to one of those coin flips in late August, who we're going to hold on to, who we're going to let go, it could be that a special teams experience can get him in there.
Another Andrew Berry draft in the books. It's kind of bittersweet for me. I loved watching this weekend. The city of Cleveland was on center display. I'm a proponent of putting the draft in different cities year to year. It reminded me of a few years ago when the draft was held in Nashville and Broadway was packed. But just to see all the fans there, the goofy Roger Goodell chair. And then I'll tell you what, too, when Myles Garrett came up on the stage, he looks like a superhero. His suit doesn't even fit him. You can tell he's just in incredible shape. I love to see him out there as well. But I'm sad this is over. I really enjoyed watching over the last 3 days.
I live about 10 minutes out of downtown Cleveland. And last night I saw the fireworks going off once the draft ended. And I was like, this is just cool. It's just nice to have. It went off perfectly. I was upset. I did have the chance to go, but I had to be fully vaccinated by April 15th. I was fully vaccinated as of Friday, so I could not go into that fan zone. But it was just cool. The bars were packed. It was kind of, on local radio, they were saying it was kind of the first big event in Cleveland since, everything shut down over a year ago in March. So it was a nice, it's not totally normal. You never want to say that during COVID, because people have gone through a lot of stuff. But
yeah,
in terms of a live event, it was just very cool to have that downtown again. And, maybe, for local Cleveland listeners, we can all push for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that actually have a music venue outside. Even we won't have Kings of Leon play. No more Kings of Leon. But it was an example of what can happen downtown on the lakefront, because right now it's a very small airport, and it's just not good. So it was very cool to see.
That was one of the most exciting things that I heard about it, was that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame took a good look at that stage, and
exactly
ideas popped in their head. And of course, the NFL planted a lot of trees and did a lot of clearing out of the area for them too, so makes it even more attractive. And the Haslams, they started a new entertainment company trying to bring more stuff to Cleveland as well. And I think it was Jimmy Haslam that alluded to plans to possibly improve the access to the lakefront from downtown, walking and driving access, which would help a lot to with everything. The only other comment I got on the whole thing, you cannot tell me that Myles Garrett did not purposefully pick the color of that suit, because he definitely looked like the Incredible Hulk coming up on the stage. And Twitter, I had such a blast reading Twitter for the day after that, all the comments and the memes and everything about that suit, and definitely was a highlight. And leading the whole crowd, and here we go, Brownies, here we go. It was fantastic. Definitely recovered nicely from the Pumpkinhead appearance. And
what a joke!
I was just very happy for the city of Cleveland and its fans. They really did a fantastic job and did well by the city. So should just be great.
I want to see one of those Myles Garrett workout videos wearing the same suit that he had on during the draft. And I tell you what, Anthony Schwartz will get a supply of Stickum. Again, we're going to do that under the radar. Pat, I'm going to send you a Demetric Felton jersey. And Steven, we will send you a Kings of Leon album. We'll call that a wrap.
I'm ready for it. Give me a vinyl.
Fellas, it's always a blast talking with you. I'll go ahead and sign off here. For Pat Opperman and Steven Kubitiza, I'm Mark Bergin. Thanks for listening to the Browns Nation Station. Go leave us a 5-star review. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Take care. We'll see you next time. And so long, everybody.